Rugrats was a show created by a married couple in the early 90s, and it was a very big part of many millennial childhoods, and it has not been forgotten.
Oh no! Mamma mia!
In fact, a new Rugrats video game published by Nickelodeon and developed by the Mixed Games was released back in September of 2024. It was named Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. Tumble in the Jungle? Rugrats Adventures in Gameland is a modern NES game. It is available on multiple modern platforms, including the Nintendo Switch, Steam, and Xbox. Because this game was developed to be compatible with original NES hardware, a fully functional NES cartridge of the game was released through Limited Run Publishing, a company that sells very limited edition physical copies of digital games. Unfortunately, the NES cartridge of the game remains out of stock ever since pre-orders closed back in April of 2024. We got our Nintendo Switch edition of Rugrats for Christmas, and have enjoyed it ever since, including my 4-year-old brother Ben, who is a surprisingly skilled retro gamer for his age. If you're interested in playing this game on modern hardware, such as the Nintendo Switch, there is an option in the menu to switch from the game's 8-bit graphics to HD mode. HD mode swaps out all of the sprites and backgrounds for modern graphics identical to the cartoon. HD mode had problems when it was first released because the original version of the game is played in 8-bit mode. Because HD mode simply smacked modern graphics on top of the pre-existing 8-bit sprites, HD mode suffered from issues including hitboxes that didn't match the HD sprites. Thankfully, an update fixed the hitboxes issue. I interrupt this broadcast to say that SteamDB.com, a website that lists patches and updates for games released on Steam, that on the most recent patch I looked at on October 14th of Rugrats Adventures in Gameland, it does not say anything about updating HD mode. It does list a few other patches, however, including fixing soft locking, but it does not mention HD mode. If you come across any sources that tell you that the HD mode hitboxes do not line up with the 8-bit mode hitboxes, that is not true because I recently played the game and I had no problem with that. Back to the video. And I experienced no problems with the gameplay in HD mode. Another issue with HD mode is that the screen is automatically zoomed in, so that the game, originally designed to fit a 90s TV screen, can fit a modern rectangular TV. This can make it harder to see what's in front of you. Thankfully, you can easily zoom out the screen by pressing ZR on your Switch controller. Problem solved. The menu also allows you to swap out the 8-bit music for modern music, and even includes a CRT filter. According to my dad, who is very familiar with CRT television screens of the 1990s, the CRT filter in this game is one of the best he's ever seen. Rugrats Adventures in Gameland stars 4 babies from the Rugrats cartoon show: Tommy, Phil, Lil, and Chucky. All 6 of the game's levels take place in different areas of Tommy's house, from their sandbox to their crib. But there's a twist. Every level is shown through the lens of a baby's imagination. Instead of simply running around Tommy's backyard, you're swinging from vine to vine in a side-scrolling platformer full of inspired level designs and beautiful graphics. On top of the already detailed levels, each baby offers a different gameplay experience due to their unique stats. Tommy, the all-around baby, has a 2-star jump, compared to Chucky's maxed out 4-star jump. Phil has the ability to automatically butt slam through blocks in the Sand in My Diaper level, and Lil can float through the air using her baby skirt. At the very beginning of the game, you must break out of your playpen with a screwdriver. Breaking out of playpens with a screwdriver is a common theme in the Rugrats cartoon, and very important to the rest of this game.
Hey, you know what? If my mommy and daddy called us stork, then I could have a baby brother to play with. Too bad we're babies. Otherwise, we could just go get a stork's egg ourselves. Oh, I'll get the screwdriver.
You then find yourself against an obstacle. It's Grandpa Lou in his recliner chair? The solution to this problem is to butt slam on the back of his chair, flipping up his feet, and letting you crawl under to the next screen. Obviously. Throughout this intro, you will also collect cookies, which refill your life bar, and Reptar coins? These Reptar coins are hidden throughout every level, and are necessary to find if you want to unlock the large Reptar gate to the final boss, beating the game. A cutscene proceeds to play, showing the babies, including Angelica, becoming excited about an upcoming Reptar game advertised on TV. Afterwards, the first real level of the game begins, called Tumble in the Jungle, and takes place in Tommy's backyard, but of course with a very thick imaginative layer of Reptar, so the level takes place in a jungle. Tumble in the Jungle plays exactly like a platformer on the NES and is mildly challenging. For instance, I had to jump from this leaf platform to another while simultaneously avoiding birds. Some people complain that this game is too hard, but unless you're some kind of iPad baby, it really isn't that bad. I must point out that a few of the jumps in this game feel a little bit too tight and slightly unfair. I believe this has to do with the large sprites and tight level design. It doesn't make the game unplayable though, and I still had a lot of fun playing it. Once you found all 4 Reptar coins and a hidden screwdriver that unlocks the gate to the level's boss, you've completed the first level and can move on to the next. I really love all of the creativity in this game, but it has me thinking, where does it all come from? Who are the Rugrats? Klasky-Csupo who? The wildly successful, ingeniously crafted cartoon, The Rugrats, comes from the minds of 3 creative people, Gabor Csupo, his wife Arlene Klasky, and Paul Germain. Our story begins in Hungary, when in 1975, the Hungarian-born and raised animator Gabor Csupo fled communism to Stockholm, Sweden. There he met his future wife Arlene Klasky, a part Jewish, Nebraska-born artist. They fell in love and were married in 1979. 1979, the end of the gloomy 1970s and the beginning of a new era, the 1980s, a decade defined by Star Wars, video games, materialism, and affluence. It was also the beginning of a new era in Klasky and Csupo's life, which would last for the next 16 years. Gabor Csupo worked for the animation studio Hanna-Barbera at the time, animating for shows such as Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, before moving with Klasky to LA in 1982. There, the married couple would establish their animation studio, Klasky-Csupo, out of their 2-bedroom apartment in what used to be Bob Clampett's animation studio in West Hollywood. In case you were wondering, Bob Clampett was a famous American animator known for his work on Looney Tunes. As of September 8, 2024, the previous Bob Clampett and Klasky-Csupo animation studio is under the title of Business Complex on Google Maps. Who knows if it's still there in 2025? Klasky-Csupo, before they animated any hit cartoons, mostly made animations for other companies. Animations including logos, commercials, and even film trailers. That would all change only 5 years later in 1987, when a man named Paul Germain entered the picture. Paul Germain, the self-described film nut and geek, attended film school at the prestigious Berkeley in 1980, except he never got his degree. While at film school, he found his way into the film and TV industry when the legendary TV producer Jim Brooks, the future producer of The Tracy Ullman Show, hired him as a post-production assistant. The movie Germain was hired to work on in the summer of 1983 was Terms of Endearment, a movie about a mother and daughter's relationship when she marries a man against her mother's wishes. Germain's job, as post-production assistant, was to assist the main production and editing team. He was the guy who would run errands for the editing crew, sync audio, and manage files. All of it sounds very boring, but it turned out Germain was incredibly lucky to be hired by Jim Brooks at the time, because Terms of Endearment would win 5 Academy Awards, turning Brooks into both a legendary TV and movie producer. Germain, now that he was a part of the film and movie industry, was one step closer to becoming a co-creator of Rugrats, along with Klasky and Csupo. The Tracy Ullman Show would be the next step. Because of the 1-minute cartoons starring a yellow family, a very popular part of the Tracy Ullman Show, were the origin of what would become The Simpsons TV show in 1989. Paul Germain's boss, Jim Brooks, had an idea to insert 1-minute cartoons in between the comedy skits of The Tracy Ullman Show. According to Germain, the story of how he got involved with the Simpsons shorts goes like this. It began when Germain rudely interrupted an important meeting Brooks was having about adding cartoons to his upcoming show. After Brooks declared he wanted Matt Groening, the creator of the Life in Hell comic strip, to animate the short cartoons, and pointed to Groening's original art hanging on his wall, Germain exclaimed, "Yeah, I love that guy's work. That's a great idea." Brooks, who could I imagine was very annoyed, tasked Germain to animate the shorts himself. Of course, Brooks was exaggerating because Germain had no experience in animation at the time. So instead, Germain would have to find an animation studio located in LA to animate whatever Matt Groening would come up with. Germain called every under-the-radar animation studio he possibly could in LA, sending them a copy of the Life in Hell comic strip in exchange for an animated tape, to see if their animation was any good. Paul Germain soon found himself with a large box full of tapes. However, according to Jermaine, most of the tapes he received weren't very good. Jermaine blames the poor quality of the tapes he received on the poor quality of cartoon shows for TV around 1987. Take the Smurfs for an example. As Jermaine went through all the crappy tapes, one tape stood out to him. That tape was sent to him by the Klasky-Csupo animation studio, and Jermaine has described the tape as being really cool. Klasky-Csupo would be hired as the studio to animate all of the Simpsons shorts in the Tracy Ullman Show from 1987 to 1989. However, according to Jermaine, the animation sent by Klasky-Csupo wasn't actually done by Klasky-Csupo. Rather, Gabor-Csupo had simply hired art school students around LA to do the animation. Animation studios outsourcing their animation to be partially or majorly done by other studios is a very common practice in the animation industry. However, if Klasky-Csupo had done absolutely nothing to create the tape they sent Jermaine, then that could be a sign of fraudulence in Gabor-Csupo's business style. Speaking of fraudulence, Dr. Nick from The Simpsons TV show is loosely based on Gabor-Csupo. Some of the animators for The Simpsons thought that Dr. Nick's voice,
"You'll want to focus on the neglected food groups, such as the whipped group, the congealed group, and the chocotastic."
Of course.
a bad impersonation of Ricky Ricardo from I Love Lucy,
$59.95.
sounded more like Gabor-Csupo.
We had to pitch to Nickelodeon some ideas. We were doing The Simpsons and we got a call from Nickelodeon that
They then decided to draw Dr. Nick, a highly fraudulent doctor, to look like Csupo. Is this all a mere coincidence?
How many opioids would you like?
I don't want any.
Oh, come on, you've got to be dependent on something.
I mean, come on. Have you ever seen Csupo's absolutely wild post on X? He's a real character.
Calling all nostalgia junkies. Can you feel the electric jolt when the legendary Klasky-Csupo splashes onto the screen? That hypnotic burst of color. Who gets an adrenaline rush and memories floating back? React!
I definitely reacted. Klasky-Csupo would animate the full-length Simpsons TV show, starting with episode number 1, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, in 1989, alongside Korean animation studio Acom. Klasky-Csupo would animate only 3 seasons of the show, due to a business fallout that occurred with the show's production company, Gracie Films. According to YouTuber SaberSpark, in a video about the downfall of Klasky-Csupo, Gracie Films wanted to install their own producer for The Simpsons and angered Csupo because he believed he was being told how to run his own company. That's why Klasky-Csupo left The Simpsons. However, leaving The Simpsons seriously hurt Klasky-Csupo, and they lost a lot of their employees. On the other hand, Klasky-Csupo may have never created Rugrats if they were happy working for The Simpsons. Creativity in times of need. In the middle of the summer of 1989, months before the full-length Simpsons TV show would air on TV, Csupo hired Paul Germain, who was a line producer for The Simpsons at the time, to work for him in development. According to Germain, the concept of hiring someone to work in development meant something very different in the mind of Gabor-Csupo. The traditional definition of development to Paul Germain was to simply shift through other people's ideas until you found something you deemed marketable. Csupo had a very hands-on definition of development and hired Germain to actually come up with his own ideas for a new cartoon. Klasky-Csupo was racing to come up with ideas for their own cartoon because of an offer given to them by Vanessa Coffey, a young executive from a little company called Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was indeed little back in 1989, before they launched their Nicktoons project, the home of many famous 90s cartoons. So while Germain and Csupo were busy at work, preparing to pitch cartoon show ideas to Vanessa Coffey at Nickelodeon, Arlene Klasky was brainstorming too, from home. Klasky was working from home because she wanted to take good care of her 2 small sons, one 4 years old and the other only 1 year old. Klasky, who has said herself her mind thinks in characters, became inspired by her babies and thought to herself, if babies could talk, what would they say? A simple spark of creativity, which would become the foundation of the Rugrats. The night before Germain would pitch all of Klasky-Csupo's ideas for a cartoon to Nickelodeon, Klasky told Germain her idea for a show that is about babies who talk when the adults leave the room. I wonder what happened at that meeting. Welcome. I'm very excited about the cartoons you have to show me today.
I am also very excited. And you're gonna love it.
Great. Are those bugs?
That's right, and they live in a city called Bugtopia.
Alright, next.
We call it Bushberries, and it's about a family who lives in the wilderness and eats berries.
What? Next.
Oh.
Do you have anything better to show me?
I do, actually, but you're not gonna like it. It's a show about talking babies. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
The talking babies? I love it!
Excuse me, what?
It's so original. Who came up with it? Oh, and those drawings are so cute!
Wait, you actually like those? I mean, Arlene Klasky came up with it.
That's great. Call me when the pilot is finished.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Babies who talk when the adults leave the room. It's brilliant. Radical Rugrats. Once Rugrats was accepted by Nickelodeon, Klasky-Csupo got busy preparing their show. According to Arlene Klasky, the first animated tape they received of Rugrats had around 90 animation errors that needed fixing. Arlene, in an episode of the Nick Animation Podcast, says she can't remember if the first tape they received that had around 90 animation errors was the pilot episode or the first episode. Based off of what the unaired pilot episode looks like, I'm just going to run with the theory that this was not the first tape Klasky-Csupo received.
I apologize for my confusing wording. I meant to say Klasky-Csupo must have received the pilot episode before the first aired episode because it's the pilot, duh.
Also, wouldn't Klasky-Csupo have had to receive the pilot episode first and not the first official episode, Tommy's first birthday? The unaired pilot episode of Rugrats, Tommy Pickles and the Great White Thing, is available to watch on YouTube, but if you look at the credits, you'll notice something interesting. Neither Klasky or Csupo are credited as animators in the pilot's credits. Instead, Peter Chung and a whole bunch of other Klasky-Csupo animators are. Even in the first aired episode of Rugrats, Tommy's first birthday, neither Klasky or Csupo are credited with the actual animation. This is because Klasky and Csupo themselves were busy being the executive producers and creators of Rugrats, along with Paul Germain. Klasky and Csupo were simply not animating the actual movements of the characters in Rugrats, just like how Walt Disney didn't animate Cinderella by himself. Klasky and Csupo, as official creators of Rugrats, represented the head of a Rugrats empire that was a very important part of many millennial childhoods. A massive Rugrats float appeared for the first time at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in 1997, and the cartoon would spawn a total of 3 animated movies. The first Rugrats movie, called The Rugrats Movie, was the first non-Disney film.
Actually, it's the first animated film, to gross over $100 million in the US, excluding Disney.
To gross over $100 million in the United States alone. Gabor Csupo made a post on X sharing this information back in 2023. With a yawn emoji as the caption?
Boring!
But why was Rugrats so popular? Sure, Rugrats had amazing writing and good animation, but what was it about the show that made it so compelling to so many people? I believe that one reason is that the show is a funny and authentic representation of familial relationships that appeals to both adults and children in many different ways. A perfect example of an authentic relationship in Rugrats is the rivalry between Stu, Tommy Pickles' dad, and his older brother Drew, Angelica's dad. Their history of sibling rivalry, coupled with Stu and Drew's different ways of life, as demonstrated by Drew's wife's focus on her career rather than on family, creates a recipe for familial tension and rivalry.
Grandma, what big ears you have.
Yes, they're for hearing.
No, it's the better to hear you with, my dear.
No, it isn't.
Of course it is.
I beg to differ.
Hey, don't get uppity with me, okay?
On the brighter side, Stu and his wife Dee Dee seem to have a very good marriage. They treat each other with love and respect, and work together to take care of their baby, Tommy. They definitely don't show any signs of future divorce, unlike Drew and his wife, Charlotte.
Family trip. 2 relaxing days on a train. I want you to promise, no business.
Well, I don't see why a person can't...
Charlotte?
All right, fine.
Sadly, there's another Rugrats-associated couple that got divorced, because Gabor Csupo and Arlene Klasky were only married between 1979 and 1995. How does a couple that makes a show about relationships get divorced? I have absolutely no idea. The New York Post published an article about it in 1999, 4 years after their divorce. The headline reads, TV's happiest divorce. Rugrats creators pleased as Phil and Lil over big bust-up. In the article, Arlene Klasky says that her and Gabor have always been business partners, and proceeds to state, we basically share the same vision creatively, and I think we trust each other. We have good reason to stay together as partners. And I bet if you really looked in the world, it's not that unusual where people like us do manage to work together. It's not that hard. Notice how Klasky mentions trust. What kind of married couple that trusts each other get divorced? I just don't understand the logic in that statement. In order for Klasky and Csupo to have been divorced in the first place, I personally believe that trust would have to be broken between them in some way. Also, in that same statement from the New York Post article, Klasky said that they share the same creative vision. Because they were both artists when they got married, could their creative vision seriously have been the foundation for their short-lived marriage? Perhaps the heavy workload and burden of the wildly successful and huge Rugrats was too much on their marriage. Whatever happened, they apparently remained partners in business after their divorce, and appeared together in an interview about Rugrats the movie on TV alongside the late voice actress of Chucky, Christine Cavanaugh. Gabor Csupo very briefly talks about how they pitched Rugrats to Nickelodeon, and Christine Cavanaugh describes what the movie is about. It's not a very interesting interview, aside from the fact that it aired on TV in 1998, 3 years after their divorce. I'm no divorce expert, but according to what I've read online, divorces can take a few years sometimes to go through, so Klasky and Csupo may have only been in the process of being divorced in that interview. Still, I would feel incredibly awkward in that situation, and to be honest, I don't think they look very happy. Is this TV's happiest divorce? I don't think so. On a brighter note, it's time for me to beat the final level of Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. Hey, I'm feeling kinda sleepy though, after all this talking. Enter Dreamland. Ah, the Dreamland level. Before playing the Dreamland level, all of the previous levels I played took place in the baby's imaginations while they were awake. However, the Dreamland level thrusts the player into the dream of a baby. The level begins when you butt slam off of Spike the dog's head into your crib and fall asleep. This level includes jumping off of cozy pillows, bouncing on baby bottles, and jumping off of floating kisses. You better watch out when you jump onto these flying carpets, because some of them can go very fast, and you'll fall to your death if you're too slow. This level was very fun to play, and the final boss is a giant sippy cup. Once you've collected all 4 Reptar coins from every level of the game, you must go to the living room stage and insert all of your coins into the slot next to the giant Reptar door. Finally, after all of your hard work, the massive gate opens. Once you've gone through the gate, you must face the final level. The final level, in the beginning, reuses many pre-existing level tiles and sprites from previous levels. First, the game reuses tiles from the Tumble in the Jungle level, then it's back to the Dreamland level, and then switches again to the Attic level. The developers could have purposefully made the final level to include all of the previous levels as a cool gimmick. Or they could have just used too much of the NES's storage in the previous level designs. Just a thought. This level, while being quite hard and quite long, is also pretty fun. Wait. I've made it to the end! It's time for the final boss fight. And the boss is... drumroll please. Angelica! Angelica, the little girl who bullies the babies in every single episode she's in. This was a fun boss fight because you get to use the 2 Reptars on the left and right of Angelica as machine guns. This boss fight is easy compared to the previous boss fights, which I appreciated because the final level was long. Just a few more hits. Bam! I beat Angelica. After the final cutscene plays, that's it. You've beaten the game. Rugrats Adventures in Gameland was a very fun NES platformer. The ability to switch in and out of modern graphics with HD mode, the cool music, the easy to navigate levels, and fun boss fight makes me highly recommend this game to anyone who likes retro NES platformers and wants to share it with their kids via modern hardware. This game is very faithful to the show, from the story centering around Reptar, unlocking gates to the bosses with a screwdriver, and including some of the show's parents before the beginning of levels. Whenever an adult appears before the beginning of a level, it acts as the contrast between the real world and the baby's imagination the levels takes place in. All in all, I give this game 4 out of 5 cookies. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and try this game yourself. Bye bye now!